let's practice with filtering and sorting. Before we start, let's just look at the introduced topics. We covered sort pretty well. There will be a few more things that you'll notice that come into this Ponder and your Prove activity this week. You're going to be using a math.random, which returns a number between 0 and 1. And so if you wanted to have, like, for example, a random number between 0 and 9, you would times that by 10, because that would be the decimal that you would times it by. And then they are using floor to make sure that rounds down. So it would never go above to 10. Anyway, so that is an example of the math.random if you haven't seen that one before. You may also see a for loop. In the past, we kind of looped through arrays with for each. This is the same idea, but it's just a simple for loop like you'd see in a lot of other programming languages. And the syntax here is, what is the counter or the incrementer? What is the condition that as long as it's true, it will keep looping through? Once it's false, it will jump. Once it's false, it will jump out of the loop. And then this is important to increment that counter that we set up by 1 each time. So it would go through and loop until this is false or until it's 5 or greater. And the dot includes, we're going to see, it's going to find out if a certain value exists in a string. And dot find is going to search an array and return those that include a certain string. So these are all just going to be working with our sorting and filtering that we're going to be doing. And so I thought I would do a quick little simple introduction for those. Mainly we will be using the dot sort, which we saw earlier, and then dot filter, which we've already talked about, and dot map, which we've also already talked about. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create one called sort filter.html and sort filter.js. And in my HTML, I'll go ahead and do a shortcut exclamation tab or enter and give it a title, sorting and filtering. And we're really not going to be showing anything on the screen with this practice. We do need to connect it up with this one. And we don't really need to worry about defer because we don't have any HTML. That should be fine. All right, let's go ahead and start with a nums array. And I'm going to put the number 12, 10, 8, and 3. And I want this to be sorted numerically. So if I go ahead and console log taking nums and using that sort method that we talked about, then it's going to do something really interesting. Open up that page and open up the console. You'll see that it sorts it by 10. Let me bring that back up. 10, 12, 3, 8. Okay. So it's seeing, because of character encoding, it's seeing that the 10 and the 12 are smaller than the 8 and the 3. But within those two, it did sort 10 and 12 and 3 and 8. But that is not going to work for a numeric sort like that. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that changes with a compare function. So if we go back to the Ponder, we can grab that function, paste that in, and now it's going to we're going to go ahead and call the compare function, and it should work just fine. So now it's going to go through and actually look at the values and not just the string character encoding, and it's going to make sure that that gets compared properly. So this function is necessary for numbers and objects in array, which we'll see here in a minute. All right, let's go back and let's grab another array. This time it's going to be a string array, and I've got it here for you so you don't have to type it in. It's called simple list, and it's got a list of fruit in it. And I'm going to turn on my word wrap here. Okay, and if we go ahead and do a simple sort without a compare function, we could just say something like, let's simple sort take in the name of the array, simple list, and then just put the regular simple sort in there. And then go ahead and console log that simple sort. We'll see that it does a pretty good job, but the glaring problem here is, again, that character encoding. Our capital B is seen as lower in the encoding than the lowercase letters. And these are just strings, so we don't really necessarily have to put it through a compare function, but we will just use the to lowercase method. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to be using the dot map to make a new array called lower list. We're going to take that simple list, map it out, and we're going to process each item in the array and send it into lower list according to this code. So function, and you could use item, or I'll put fruit here. For each one of these, we want to return it to the new lower list array, but we want to make sure each fruit or each item is changed to lowercase first. Now we can sort that new array. So we can set up a variable like .lower sort, because we're going to sort it, and then we can take our lower list and use the simple sort at this point where there's no more capitals, and that new lower sort should be perfectly alphabetical and all lowercase. So let's take a look, and there we can see bananas that was first before is now in the proper order where it should be. Let's take that same lower sorted array and let's try to now filter it. So we're looking at this lower sort, which we just saw contains this alphabetized list of all lowercase fruit. And we're going to use the dot filter, which we've seen before, to do this. So let's pretend we've got a search term here. And usually this might be something that the user would type in. So we might be getting a value from an input box or something. But let's go ahead and set it up to be a very simple AN string. And we're going to set up a variable called filter fruit. Take that lower sort with the lowercase alphabetized fruit and use the filter to to return only something that has a certain condition is true. We're going to find that out through a search fruit function. So each item in the array is going to get sent to this function called search fruit. You can put fruit here again, or you could put item, whatever makes more sense to you. Only return it if the item includes the search term. Now remember, you might not have seen the dot includes. That's why I went over it at the beginning. But the dot includes is going to find out if a value exists in the string. So it's going to be looking at this value, the AN, and seeing if it exists. If it exists, then this is true. The condition is true, and it will be sent to filter fruit. Okay, so now we can console log the filter fruit array that we made with filter. And we should see only those that have an AN inside of them. Banana, mango, oranges. All right, let's try a different one. Let's change our search term to maybe B. And now we should only see those that have a B in them. Or you might choose something like CO. And now we should only see those that have a CO somewhere in them. Okay, so pretty cool. Filtering out items in array according to a search term or a string that we've defined. Okay, let's go ahead and sort properties in an object array, which is what we're going to need to do for our assignment this week. So let's go back. Let's bring this down because we're going to keep using this, and I want it to be a little closer to where we're going to be at. We're going to use that again. Again, that is a function that can be reused again and again. And this time we're going to be looking at an object array. So let's copy this simple products object array. And we want to go through here and sort it by price. Okay, So we're going to come in and we're going to go ahead and type a new array called product sort. And we're going to be taking that products object array using sort, but of course we need with objects and numbers, we always need that compare function. Okay, so I leave it like that. Nothing really is going to happen. It's just going to bring it in the same order that it was in the object array. Prices are not numerical or sorted, and neither is the name. So with an object, it does bring in each one of those, or brings them in as A and B, but it doesn't really know, are we sorting it by product name or are we sorting them by price? You have to let it know. So you'd have to put either the price or the product name after each one of these. And I can hold down my key. Okay, so now it knows, hey, bring in this whole object, which is A, and this whole object, which is B the first time. But then look at the price, $29.99 versus $49.99. It's going to go through again and again until it gets those done. But it needed to know which one we're looking at. So now if I save that, we should see that they are now numerically sorted by price in the right order. So a little bit different. You do have to add a little bit to that compare function for this to work. And again, we could do the same thing with any of the properties in there. We have one other property that's called product name. And that would work as well. Now we should see that it's alphabetized by product name. B comes before L, comes before W. All right, so a little bit different with the object array properties. You're going to be using an object array that actually has an array inside of each object. So I wanted to show that as well. So let's go back to our Ponder and grab this animals object array, which does have, you'll see a traits. So in your assignment, you'll see one that's called tags. So ours is called traits. And so we've got an array inside of each of our objects. And then each of these objects is a part of the animals array. And we're going to just go ahead and set up a search term, call it query, and we want to look for dog. And we can say, let's make a filtered list. And we're going to take the animals array. It's just the name of the array here. And we're going to filter. And then we're going to do a search list. And this is a function that's going to get called. So search list item, or you could have put animal or something there. And we're only going to return it if the item name, now watch the property we have to put in there. Let's do it with name first, and then we'll try it with traits. Is, and we're going to change it to lowercase. And then we're going to use includes the query. And the reason I'm putting to lowercase here, I mean, we obviously have a lowercase, but your user might, if you're getting this from an input box, they may have put a capital on it. You just want to make sure it's lowercase to begin with. So remember, filtering is going to go through each one of them, and it's going to go in and say, hey, look at its name, make sure it's lowercase, and does that include, somewhere in that name, does it include the query term? And if it does, then it should be part of this filtered list. Save that, and we should see the result. And we only had one called dog that came back because that was all that we had there. Okay, so again, you could look for, you could even look for partial letters, and it would find different things. So there we have a filtering. Now let's go ahead and filter for traits. It's going to be a little bit different because it's got to dig down a little deeper and go in through another array while it's looking. Copy this information so I don't have to retype too much of it. And we don't want to call it query again because we already have one with that name. And we're also going to be filtering by traits, so I'll call this one traits. And we're going to do a new function called search traits instead of search list. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at not the name, but the traits. And it's going to be a little bit different because we've got to dig down a little bit deeper inside of that array. So we're going to do traits.find. And then this is like an anonymous function using an arrow function, trait or item, whatever you want to call it, bringing that in as a parameter, and then looking at that, each one of those traits that comes in for each one, and changing that to lowercase and including the query trait, so that we're looking at this now. And we're going to leave the dot to lowercase there. We need one more paren because we added one there. Okay, so a little bit different. We're now having to do a little bit more because we're looking at traits and we're going through each trait. So we're using .find to go through each trait to return only those that include a certain string in them. And that's what this includes is doing. Okay, so a little bit different. It's going a little deeper there. I don't think any of the traits have an OX in them. So let's definitely change that. Maybe we'll try wild because 3 of them have a wild trait. And we don't want to console log filtered list again, but we want to console log filtered traits. Okay, so now we should have the 3 animals that were wild, right? Or we could say cuddly here. And we'd have the 2 dog and cat that are cuddly. So it's going through and it's looking through all of this information. Okay, so we could put strong and we should get back lion. Okay, and if we had a number of different animals with that strong trait, they would all show up. So that's a little bit different. It's got a little more information that we're going to need there when you're looking through an array inside of one of the objects in a large object array. All right, so there are all just some practice kind of getting to know sorting and filtering a little bit better. There's going to be 2 parts to this ponder because now the next video we're going to be putting it all together in something very similar to what your homework will be to practice a little bit more.